1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. My name is Jason. I'm lucky enough that my hobby and career is both finding and excavating dinosaurs. I've been digging fossils, dinosaurs my entire life. Often you don't know if it's just gonna be a couple bones. 9 times out of 10, it'll just be like a random 1 or 2 bones. And then lots of things that people have to think about is the dinosaurs aren't buried usually as complete skeletons. Just think about on the side of the road, if you see somebody hits a deer or something, and you see there's a complete animal there. And you're driving that same route to work every day. A week later, the legs are gone, the head's gone, there's crows, coyotes or whatever, pulling pieces. And by the time that thing turns into a skeleton, there's a leg 20 feet there, there's an arm 40 feet there. That's the same thing that happens to these dinosaurs. But you got to think of, instead of coyotes, you got, 3,000 pound Allosaurus, with a skull that big. And generally, those pieces scattered is what you find coming out of the hill.
Jason found what is looking to be the largest, most complete stegosaur ever found. It is an objectively incredible specimen.
It was on May of 2022, my birthday, and I was with one of my best friends at the time, and he was my head excavator. And he said, "Well, Jason, what do you want to do for your birthday?" And I said, "I want to go find a dinosaur." Casually went out, or hiking around. We had many excavations with other dinosaurs going on at the time, but I wanted to find a new dinosaur. So we started walking around. We walked for about an hour and a half. We went down off a road and into a ravine, and my friend was walking in front of me, and when he stopped to turn around, I said, "Hey," I was like, "there's a femur sticking out of the wall down there." And he was standing right on top of it. And he looked down and he said, "Where, below the lichen?" And I said, "No, it is the lichen." So he jumped down and took out his knife. He didn't believe me, and he started poking out, and some of the rock peeled away. He looked up at me, he goes, "It is a femur." And I said, "Yeah, I know, that's what I said." And I saw it and I said, "I think that's a Stegosaurus femur."
It's a little hard to see, but there's your neural canal. There's centrum, here's your spine top, and that's your distal end of a femur to a stego, just sticking out.
So we started looking around and realized right next to the femur there was a cross-section of a 20-inch long vertebrae. I mean, Stegosaurus get that big, but that's really big. I realized right away that's a quintessential Stegosaurus. We found some ribs, and a couple of the dorsal plates were sticking out of the ground right there, and I said, "Wow, that's good birthday right there." So we went back and got a piece of equipment. 2 days later, we came back and we started slowly removing all of the boulders and everything that was above it, because you got to open up a big perimeter, because you want to make sure you have plenty of space, because you don't know how large the dinosaur or how distributed it is or spread out. We cleaned off what we saw exposed, photographed it, mapped it in. That's the beginning of the process of the excavation.
It is the real deal. It is an absolute dreamboat of a dinosaur. And it is what you are looking for when you want a specimen. It's attractive, it's scientifically important, it has a number of interesting pathologies, it's very robust, it just looks amazing.
We're in Utah to inspect a stegosaur that we are going to be offering for auction in July. The specimen was discovered 2 years ago in Dinosaur, Colorado, on my client's ranch. And it is almost finished being prepared. And in about 2 weeks, we're going to pack it up, crate it, and ship it to Sotheby's to be installed in the galleries. So today we're here to take a closer look at it, see what the finishing touches are before it comes out to New York.
I get a lot of calls for dinosaurs. The first thing that I always ask is to see the paperwork. First and foremost, I need to see what the GPS coordinates are of the find. Then I need to see the land deed. Who owns the land where this fossil was found? If it's federally owned land, conversation ends. If it's state land, if it's tribal land, if it's city land, end of conversation. So it all comes down to ownership. Once we determine who owns the land, I need to see if there are any liens or encumbrances on the land. And if the person who found the fossil is not the landowner, then I need documentation to show that they had permission to excavate the fossil on the land. So I need to see, usually it's in the form of a lease agreement. I need to understand what the financial arrangement is between the prospector, we'll call them, and the landowner. Jason is super unique because he owns his land, he excavates the fossil, he does the preparation, he does the mounting, he'll come do the installation. He really, goes from point A to point Z, and he includes me every step of the way. And those are really the only types of people I'll work with, is that I have full visibility into the process.
Beautiful and real, heavy. So this actual specimen is somewhere between 75 and 85%, which is a very, very high number. Generally in our world, 60% of an animal is considered a good skeleton. You get over 70%, it's a really good skeleton. You get over 80, it's premier. It's the best of the best. And Stegosaurus is a very, very incredibly rare dinosaur in the first place. So even just finding parts here and there, most people who look for or excavate for dinosaurs, they're lucky to find any Stegosaurus material their entire life.
This particular specimen is really, really exciting because it's enormous. It has an incredible level of preservation. We even found skin impressions with this specimen, which is super, super rare. It has some really interesting pathologies. The skull is incredibly complete. The specimen overall is incredibly complete.
And in this piece, you can see the skin impressions on this. This piece goes right here. It was folded up.
Wow. I think
Goes
this is
right
also a really good example of how easy it is
To miss.
for this material to be missed and
Yes.
to be destroyed. If you're an untrained eye walking by, is just going to think there's a bunch of rocks. I mean, just the chances of something like this happening.
It means it was buried quickly.
The quality of the fossil, it's a very different coloration. If you see things coming from the Hell Creek Formation, your T-Rex, Triceratops, they tend to have a sandier tan color. When you're talking about Jurassic fossils from the Morrison Formation, where this was found, those fossils tend to be more black, graphite color, dark gray. They're also very difficult to extract. That rock is very hard.
He was quickly buried, and I know because the layers that we chase for these dinosaurs are the more difficult to dig, but they have the better preservation, and they have more articulation on the skeletons. They're cross-bedded sandstones, or they call them channel sands, because generally it's a deep channel, or in the river, it hits a bend and turns, and it's higher energy environment, and they get washed in there, and they settle out and get buried quickly.
Most of the business I've gotten has been referrals, word of mouth. Getting into this market, I had to figure out who was who I could trust, but they also had to figure out if they could trust me. I met Jason as the result of a referral. It was somebody who I was introduced to, who I'd done a good business deal with, and they were very happy with it.
So I met Cassandra through a mutual friend who knew I had this incredible specimen here in-house. Said, hey, do you think that could be offered for sale? I called Cassandra and we started working. That specimen got sold, and that's how it started.
Jason trusted me, and we ended up doing a great deal on another specimen. And I recognized that he was, really receptive and excited to learning about the art world and the auction world.
Hey, Cassandra.
Hey, Jason, how's it going?
Not too bad. I'm glad I got good enough reception. We're just opening up the last jacket right now for the Stegosaurus. Here, I'll show you. We just popped the top off, you can see. So this jacket's actually upside down. So this is the layer that's underneath our Stegosaurus event.
And we're really partnering to make sure that we're covering every base and we're getting all of the information we need so that these are appealing to the entire community, that this isn't just something that a private collector is going to buy, that this is something that a museum might also want to buy, so that we've got the fullest, most robust information about this specimen possible.
So I've been lucky enough to be able to work with Cassandra because she's incredible. In the process, it's always fun when she comes and hangs out so we can discuss and look at this exact specimen. Because initially when we discussed this specimen, it was still on the ground. I agree, it's better for research and study. She's finally able to come over here. I can show her all the incredible aspects of this animal to help mediate and push things through to Sotheby's.
There are some people who have been very unreceptive. They don't care how the auction world works. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They want to do things their way, and I respect that. But Jason and the other people that I work with has been willing to take my lead in terms of, okay, what documentation do you need? How can you improve your process to both better preserve the scientific data and make your specimen more valuable?
What about the femurs?
Femurs, yep. Here's our right femur.
Okay.
This is 100%. So our left femur, it's about 90%.
Okay, got it.
This had a couple little sections missing from when it was weathering and broken, but it went back together nicely. So after initial point of discovery, then we do a little hand digging and we realize it has a high chance of turning out to be something. Then we'll go back and we'll get crew and we'll get, larger equipment and tools, do the photograph, map up what we can, slowly dig by hand and consolidate. You don't want to expose it and let it dry out too quickly or if it's going to rain or anything. So to protect that, we consolidate it with the consolidant and then we'll do plaster jacketing. It's just plaster of Paris, water, and burlap. And you do multiple layers over top of it until it's strong enough to support what you're trying to get out of the ground. Then we pick it up and we put it onto a trailer, strap it down, and then drive it back to the laboratory. On general, for a dinosaur, from the point of discovery to the point where it's prepared and mounted is 1.5 years, roughly. And once we get those plaster-coated jackets back in the laboratory, we have to cut those open. And as you're doing the preparation with these pneumatic chisels and scribes and also hand tools, you photograph as you remove the layers of rock on the bones. So once we get all the bones out of the jackets and identified, then we lay them out and compare them to the scientific research, published papers, figure out what is what, where what goes, what percentage of the dinosaur we have. And then once we figure out that, we do what's called an osteogram, which is basically a diagram where it highlights the colors, what we have and what's missing. And then once we discern what we have and what's missing, then we have to figure out how are we going to fill in those gaps? How are we going to make this look like the dinosaur you see in a museum or every little kid's like, wow, mommy, that's a dinosaur. So once we get to that point, then we have to start looking for replica material that we could use. What we like to do, we'll scan the animal and do a lot of 3D printing. The wonderful thing about 3D printing is if I'm missing a femur or humerus on an animal and I don't have the exact same size one, I have a beautiful one, but it's to a different sized animal. So you got to expand on certain axes to make that so it's proportioned correctly for an adult animal. So we can do that on the computer. We can change shifts, add shifts, and then we will take those and we'll fit them into the skeleton, into the spots that we have missing and adjust them in. And you want it to match as well as possible to the original.
Once these blanks are filled in, these missing pieces, they're usually painted to match. And once the animal is mounted, it's not obvious to the untrained eye what is actually fossil and what isn't.
With these fused chevrons and those chevrons, plus my favorite one that's inside the scapulocoracoid, there's a total of 43 chevrons. So each dinosaur we do is called a clutch mount. Clutch mount just means that you fabricate so that there's steel that hugs the bones, each individual bone tightly, and we have little prongs and or slides, slides that come in and out on it, and it clutches each individual element and holds it separate. And generally it starts with a trip to the metal mart, and you load up, you get 400 or 500 pounds of steel, just steel rod and plates, and And then you come up with an idea and you kind of formulate and draw out what position you want this animal to be in. And then you start doing all the research. What's the correct locomotion? You have to make it very natural and organic looking. For us to build the armature from start to finish takes about 3 months. Before the animal goes to its final destination, you have it down to the science putting the animal up and down to adjust. Because obviously you don't want to be welding and stuff when you have the dinosaur up on the mount. So you're constantly taking it up, putting it back down. So by the time the specimen is ready to go to its final destination, you've basically put the skeleton up or taken it down 20 or 30 times. Once Sotheby's expert come in and verify all the information that I've given them, then we'll crate this animal up. We use 2-part spray and foam, put in crates, pack her all up, send them off to New York. Set them up there in the gallery and let the whole world see her.
You know, as we find more discoveries, we understand these creatures more, things change, things flux. I mean, who knows, in 50 years, maybe T-Rex won't exist anymore and we'll realize that we're actually looking at 7 different types of theropods. You know, we don't have enough information. The people who are doing most of the work excavating these and who are saving them, because let's be clear, if they're not excavated, they are lost. Erosion destroys these, you know, further tectonic shifts and earthquakes and such make us lose these. We need commercial paleontologists because those are the people who are investing their own personal funds and going out there to dig. And this is expensive, you know, I mean, it's not just camping and, you know, digging with a little shovel. Sometimes you've got to bring in heavy equipment. Say you're in like a solid rock bed. Say you found something that's got 60 feet of overburden above it. You need to remove all of that soil from the top. I mean, these people are devoted their entire essence to the hunt for these, you know, creatures. What are the secrets of dinosaurs?
Finding the animal, to me, that's incredible. Then once I get it up to the point where it is now, we get it all standing up in all of its wonderful glory, then the next person who, you know, purchases it for its final destination, they get the excitement. So I can feel their excitement because it's the excitement I had. And then they're hopefully going to transfer that on to somebody else, like a museum or a repository, and donate it that way, or it might be a museum or repository buying it. So to me, it's happiness on both ends, the discovery and the leaving of the specimen.
The academic community could greatly benefit from working closely with the commercial community. But many of the guys that I work with are donating things to the museums. Like they love this stuff. They want people to find out more. So I'm really hoping that this project will bring those two worlds together, is helping the academic community see that if done responsibly, if it's done in a fully transparent manner, there is no loss to science with the sale of a dinosaur like this.